I'm standing in my childhood bedroom, holding a birth certificate that doesn't belong to any of us. The name reads Sophie Martinez. Born 3 years after me, father listed as Robert Martinez. My father. The same man who taught me to ride a bike, who never missed a single one of my soccer games, who I thought I knew everything about. The certificate is dated from Phoenix, Arizona, a place my dad claimed he'd never been to. My hands are shaking as I stare at the undeniable proof that my entire life has been built on a lie. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Mom's voice echoes in my head from just hours ago. Don't cause drama, Elena. Some stones are better left unturned. But how can I pretend I never saw this? How can I go back to family dinners and birthday celebrations knowing that somewhere out there, I have a sister I've never met? My name is Elena Martinez and I'm 28 years old. Until this morning, I thought I knew exactly who I was and where I came from. I'm the older of 2 daughters in what I believed was a close-knit Hispanic family, living in Sacramento, California. My younger sister Carmen is 25, a kindergarten teacher with the biggest heart you've ever seen. Mom works as a nurse at the local hospital, the same job she's had for 20 years. And Dad owns a small but successful landscaping business that he built from nothing when he immigrated from Mexico 30 years ago. We're the kind of family that gathers every Sunday for dinner, where Mom makes her famous tamales and Dad tells the same stories about the old country that we pretend we haven't heard 100 times before. Carmen and I roll our eyes at his jokes, but we love hearing them anyway. We celebrate every holiday together, take annual camping trips to Lake Tahoe, and support each other through everything life throws our way. At least, that's what I thought until this morning changed everything. I work as a graphic designer for a marketing firm downtown, a job I love because it lets me be creative while still paying the bills. I've been dating Miguel for 3 years now, and we've been talking about getting engaged soon. Life felt perfect, predictable, safe. I had my routine, my family traditions, my future planned out. I should have known it was too good to last. The discovery happened by complete accident. Dad had been complaining about his back for weeks, the result of 30 years of physical labor taking its toll on his 55-year-old body. Mom finally convinced him to see a doctor. But being the stubborn man he is, he refused to take time off work for the appointment. Instead, he asked me to go to his office and grab some insurance paperwork he needed for the visit. His office is a cluttered space above the garage, filled with invoices, business receipts, and photos of landscaping projects he's proud of. I'd been there countless times growing up, helping him with paperwork, when his English wasn't quite good enough for the more complicated business documents. He trusts me completely, has always treated me more like a business partner than just his daughter when it comes to the company. I found the insurance folder easily enough, but as I was pulling it from the filing cabinet, another folder fell to the floor, spilling its contents across the concrete. As I knelt to gather the scattered papers, that's when I saw it. Mixed in with old tax returns and business licenses was a birth certificate for someone named Sophie Martinez, born in Phoenix on March 15, 2000. The father's name was listed as Roberto Martinez, my dad's full name. At first, I thought it had to be some kind of mistake. Maybe it belonged to a client, somehow got mixed up in Dad's files. But as I looked closer, I noticed other documents in the folder. Hospital bills from Phoenix dated around the same time, a custody agreement, child support payment records going back years, and photos. Dozens of photos of a little girl with Dad's eyes and Mom's smile. But it wasn't Carmen or me. The little girl in the photos looked exactly like Carmen did at that age. The same dimples, the same thick dark hair, the same mischievous grin. But the backgrounds were all wrong. Desert landscapes instead of California suburbs. A different house, different people I didn't recognize. And Dad was in many of the photos, looking exactly as I remembered him from my own childhood, but living what appeared to be a completely different life. I sat on that concrete floor for what felt like hours, going through every piece of paper, every photograph, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. My father had another family, a daughter named Sophie who is now 25 years old, just 2 months younger than Carmen. The timeline was devastating. Dad had been supporting this other family financially for decades, sending monthly payments that I now realized explained some of the financial stress our family had experienced over the years. The custody agreement revealed that Sophie lived with her mother, a woman named Isabella Rodriguez, in Phoenix. Dad had visitation rights every other weekend and alternating holidays, which suddenly explained all those business trips he took throughout my childhood. The trips, he said, were for expanding the landscaping business into new markets. The weekends he claimed he was attending trade shows or meeting with suppliers. All lies. What made it worse was realizing how calculated it all had been. The scheduling was meticulous. He would visit Sophie during weekends when Carmen and I were busy with our own activities, when Mom was working extra shifts at the hospital. He had managed to live two completely separate lives for over 20 years, without any of us suspecting a thing. I found myself thinking about all the times Dad had seemed distant, distracted. The phone calls he would take in private, stepping outside or going to his office when certain numbers appeared on his screen. The way he sometimes seemed sad after returning from his business trips, like he was grieving something. Now I understood. He was grieving the time he couldn't spend with his other daughter, the life he was missing with his other family. The financial records painted a clear picture of the sacrifices our family had unknowingly made. Thousands of dollars every month going to child support and medical expenses for Sophie. Money that could have paid for family vacations we couldn't afford. College funds that were never quite as large as they should have been. The down payment on a bigger house that Mom had always dreamed of but Dad insisted we couldn't swing. I thought about all the times Mom had worried about money, taking extra shifts at the hospital to make ends meet while Dad claimed the business was going through a slow period. The times Carmen and I had to get jobs in high school not just for spending money, but to help with our own school expenses because the family budget was always stretched thin. Dad had been a good provider, but now I understood why it sometimes felt like we were just getting by despite his successful business. The photos were what hurt the most. Picture after picture of Dad with this other daughter, celebrating birthdays, graduations, holidays. Sophie playing soccer, just like I had. Dad teaching her to drive, the same patient smile on his face that I remembered from my own driving lessons. Sophie in a prom dress, Dad looking proud and emotional as he pinned on her corsage. A high school graduation photo with Dad beaming next to a young woman who looked so much like Carmen it took my breath away. There were recent photos too. Sophie as an adult, working at what looked like a veterinary clinic based on the uniform she wore. Photos of her with a young man who was probably a boyfriend, Dad's arm around both of them in what was clearly a family dinner setting. Just last month, there was a photo of Sophie holding a positive pregnancy test, Dad's expression showing pure joy as he prepared to become a grandfather to this grandchild we'd never know about. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Dad was going to be a grandfather, and he was planning to keep.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story.
That secret from us too. This wasn't just about a past mistake or a brief affair. This was an ongoing, active relationship that continued to this day. While we were planning family gatherings and making memories, Dad was doing the exact same thing with another family in another state. I tried to rationalize it, to find some explanation that would make it hurt less. Maybe it had happened during a rough patch in my parents' marriage that I was too young to remember. Maybe Sophie's mother had tricked Dad somehow, trapped him in a situation he couldn't escape. Maybe he'd wanted to tell us but never found the right time, and now it had gone on so long that he didn't know how to come clean. But the evidence suggested otherwise. The relationship appeared to be loving, ongoing, and intentional. In the photos, Dad looked genuinely happy with Sophie and her mother. Not trapped or regretful, but content, like he had chosen this life alongside the one he lived with us. I found myself wondering about Sophie, this sister I never knew existed. What did she know about us? Did she think she was Dad's only family, or did she know about Mom, Carmen, and me? Did she wonder why Dad could only visit on weekends? Did she grow up feeling like she was missing something, the way Carmen and I now realized we had been missing half of our father's life? The questions multiplied exponentially. How many of Dad's stories were lies? When he talked about his childhood in Mexico, his journey to America, his early struggles to build the business, how much of that was true? Had he told Sophie the same stories, or did she get different versions of his history? Did they have their own family traditions, their own inside jokes, their own version of Sunday dinners that paralleled ours? I thought about Mom and felt sick to my stomach. Had she known? Was she complicit in this deception, or was she as much a victim as Carmen and me? The thought of confronting her terrified me almost as much as confronting Dad. Our family had always prided itself on honesty, on being there for each other no matter what. Mom had drilled into Carmen and me the importance of truth, of facing problems head-on rather than running from them. How could she preach those values while living such a fundamental lie? But then I remembered something that made my blood run cold. Last month, Mom had casually mentioned that Dad seemed distracted lately, more emotional than usual. She'd attributed it to stress from work and his back problems, but now I realized the timing coincided with Sophie's pregnancy announcement. Dad wasn't stressed about business. He was processing the joy and complexity of becoming a grandfather to a child he couldn't openly acknowledge. The more I thought about it, the more details fell into place like pieces of a horrible puzzle. Dad's insistence on handling all the business finances himself, never letting Mom get too involved in the bookkeeping. His reluctance to take family vacations that would interfere with his weekend trips to Phoenix. The way he sometimes seemed sad after phone calls, especially around holidays when visitation schedules might be complicated. I realized I was crying, sitting on the garage floor surrounded by evidence of my father's double life. These weren't tears of sadness exactly, but of rage. Rage at being lied to for my entire life. Rage at the sacrifices Mom had unknowingly made. Rage at the financial struggles we'd endured while Dad was supporting another family. Rage at missing out on knowing Sophie, who by all accounts seemed like an amazing young woman I would probably love if I ever got the chance to meet her. The practical implications started sinking in too. What would this mean for Mom's future? She was 53 years old, had dedicated her entire adult life to this marriage and this family. If she didn't know about Sophie, finding out would devastate her. If she did know, then everything I believed about my mother was also a lie. What about Carmen, my sweet, innocent sister, who still believed in fairy tale endings and true love? She was getting serious with her boyfriend, talking about marriage and children of her own. How would learning about Dad's deception affect her ability to trust men, to believe in commitment and fidelity? And what about Sophie herself? If Dad had been living this double life for 25 years, what kind of person did that make him? How could the man who taught me about integrity and honesty be capable of such sustained deception? How could the father who seemed so devoted to our family be simultaneously devoted to another family, dividing his love, attention, and resources between two sets of children who didn't even know the others existed? The business implications were significant too. Dad had always talked about leaving the landscaping company to Carmen and me, his legacy for his daughters. But what about Sophie? Did she expect to inherit part of the business? Were there legal complications we didn't know about? How much of what we thought belonged to our family actually belonged to Sophie and her mother? I thought about all the times Dad had seemed like the perfect father. The soccer games where he cheered louder than any other parent. The nights he helped me with homework, patiently explaining math concepts until I understood them. The way he'd held me when I cried over my first heartbreak, promising me that someday I'd find someone who deserved me. Had those moments been genuine, or was I sharing his affection with another daughter who was getting the same attention on alternate weekends? The photographs showed that Sophie had played soccer too. Had Dad missed some of my games to attend hers? When he taught me to drive, had he already taught her the same lessons? Were Carmen and I getting hand-me-down fathering, the second round of parenting experiences he'd already perfected with our secret sister? I found myself angry at Isabella Rodriguez too, though I knew that wasn't entirely fair. I didn't know her circumstances, didn't know what Dad had told her about his life in Sacramento. Maybe she thought he was divorced or separated. Maybe she knew about us and didn't care. Maybe she was as much a victim of his deception as we were. But still, I resented her for being part of this lie that had shaped my entire existence. The timing of the discovery felt significant too. I was at an age where I was starting to think seriously about my own future, about marriage and children, and the kind of family I wanted to build with Miguel. How could I trust my own judgment about relationships when I'd been so completely wrong about my own father? How could I believe in marriage and commitment when the example I'd grown up with was built on deception? I started questioning everything about my childhood, reinterpreting memories through this new lens of knowledge. The times Dad seemed stressed weren't about work pressure. They were about managing two families. The weekend trips weren't about business expansion. They were about visiting his other daughter. The financial struggles weren't about market fluctuations. They were about child support payments. Even positive memories became tainted. The pride in Dad's voice when he talked about his successful business now seemed hollow, knowing that success was partially built on depriving his Sacramento family of resources that were going to Phoenix. The family traditions that felt so special and unique might have been duplicated in Arizona, making them less meaningful and authentic. I thought about Sophie's mother and wondered what kind of woman she was. The few photos that included her showed someone who looked kind, someone Dad seemed genuinely happy with. Was she the love of his life? Was our family in Sacramento the obligation while Phoenix was where his heart truly belonged? Or was he somehow genuinely committed to both families, compartmentalizing his life in a way that seemed impossible to maintain? The legal questions were overwhelming too. Was Dad technically a bigamist? Had he married Isabella, or was their relationship common law? Were there two sets of legal documents, two sets of emergency contacts, two versions of his will? If something happened to Dad, would Sophie and her mother show up to the funeral, shocking us all at the worst possible moment? I realized I needed to confront this situation, but I had no idea how. Should I talk to Dad first, giving him a chance to explain before involving Mom and Carmen? Should I tell Mom privately, letting her decide how to handle the revelation? Should I try to contact Sophie directly, reaching out to the sister I'd never known existed? Each option seemed fraught with potential for causing immense pain to people I loved. The weight of carrying this secret felt impossible. How could I sit through Sunday dinner, watching Dad tell his familiar stories, knowing that he was living an elaborate lie? How could I watch Mom fuss over him, taking care of his needs and worrying about his health, while he was simultaneously receiving the same care from another woman? How could I listen to Carmen talk about her future plans, her faith in love and family, without preparing her for the devastation that was coming? But Mom's words kept echoing in my head. Don't cause drama. She'd said it just that morning when I'd mentioned that I thought one of our neighbors was having an affair. Mom had dismissed my concerns, insisting that it wasn't our business and that some secrets were better left undisturbed. At the time, I'd thought she was being overly cautious. Now I wondered if she was speaking from experience, if she somehow knew about Dad's double life, and had chosen to ignore it rather than face the consequences of the truth. The possibility that Mom knew made everything worse. If she was aware of Sophie's existence and had chosen to stay silent, then our entire family dynamic was even more complicated than I'd imagined. It would mean that both my parents had been lying to Carmen and me for our entire lives, that the values they'd taught us about honesty and integrity were just words they didn't actually live by. I tried to imagine what the conversation would be like when the truth finally came out. Would Dad try to justify his actions? Would he claim he'd been protecting us by keeping the secret? Would he expect us to understand? To forgive him for maintaining two families for 25 years? The scenarios I pictured all ended in screaming, tears, and the complete destruction of everything I'd believed about my family. The practical implications kept multiplying in my mind. If Dad had been sending money to Phoenix for Sophie's entire life, how much were we talking about? Tens of thousands? Hundreds of thousands? Money that could have changed our lives significantly if it had stayed in Sacramento. Money that could have paid for better schools, family vacations, a nicer house, more secure college funds for Carmen and me. I thought about all the times Mom had worked double shifts, coming home exhausted after 16 hours at the hospital. All the times Carmen and I had applied for scholarships and financial aid, carefully managing our college expenses to avoid burdening the family. All the times we'd made do with less, thinking Dad was doing his best to provide for us, when in reality he was dividing his resources between two families. The betrayal felt personal in a way that went beyond just family dynamics. Dad had taught me to work hard, to be responsible with money, to plan for the future. He'd modeled these values while simultaneously living a life that contradicted everything he'd taught me. How could I trust any of the lessons he'd given me when his own behavior was so hypocritical? I found myself wondering about Sophie's personality, her interests, her dreams. Did she share my love of art and design? Did she have Dad's sense of humor and Mom's compassionate nature? Was she planning to have children soon, making Dad a grandfather to babies we'd never know? The thought of having nieces or nephews I'd never meet felt like another layer of loss on top of the already devastating revelation. The geographic distance between Sacramento and Phoenix suddenly seemed significant too. It was far enough that Dad could maintain separate lives without much risk of the families accidentally crossing paths, but close enough that he could visit regularly without raising too much suspicion. Had he chosen Phoenix specifically for this reason? Had the location of Sophie's family been a calculated decision to facilitate his double life? I thought about Miguel and our relationship, how this discovery would affect my ability to trust and commit. We'd been talking about marriage, about building a family together, but how could I take those steps when my own understanding of family had been so completely shattered? Would I spend the rest of my life wondering if Miguel was hiding secrets from me, if the family we built together was as authentic as it appeared? The questions seemed endless, each one leading to 3 more that I couldn't answer. The only thing I knew for certain was that I couldn't unknow what I'd discovered. The innocent version of my family was gone forever, replaced by something complex and painful that I wasn't sure how to navigate. As I finally stood up from the garage floor, carefully placing all the documents back in their folder, I made a decision. I would confront Dad first, privately, giving him a chance to explain before I involved anyone else. I owed him that much, despite the magnitude of his deception. But I also knew that whatever explanation he offered, nothing could undo the 28 years of lies that had shaped my understanding of who we were as a family. The drive home felt surreal, like I was living in someone else's life. The familiar streets of Sacramento looked different somehow, like I was seeing them through new eyes. This was still my hometown, but now I knew it was only half of Dad's world. Somewhere in Phoenix, there was another neighborhood, another house, another daughter, who called him Papa, and had no idea that his real name was shared by 2 other sisters she'd never met. That evening, I sat through dinner with my family, watching Dad laugh at Carmen's stories about her kindergarten students, listening to Mom update us on the hospital gossip, participating in the familiar rhythm of our Sunday tradition. But everything felt hollow, like I was watching actors perform a play about a happy family, rather than actually being part of one. Dad looked tired, older than his 55 years, and I found myself wondering if the stress of maintaining 2 families was finally taking its toll. When he complained again about his back pain, I felt a confusing mixture of sympathy and anger. I wanted to take care of him because he was my father, but I also resented him for the lies that had brought us to this moment. Carmen was her usual bubbly self, chattering about her boyfriend's latest romantic gesture and her plans for the upcoming school year. Watching her innocent joy felt heartbreaking, knowing that this revelation would devastate her faith in love and family. She deserved to know the truth, but she also deserved to hold onto her optimism for as long as possible. Mom seemed distracted during dinner, occasionally staring off into space with a worried expression. I found myself studying her face, looking for any sign that she knew about Sophie. Was her distraction related to Dad's secret, or was she genuinely concerned about his health issues? The uncertainty was maddening. After dinner, as we cleaned up together in the kitchen, Mom pulled me aside for a private conversation. Her next words would haunt me for days to come. "Elena, I need to tell you something important," she said, her voice low and serious. "Your father has been acting strange lately, and I'm worried he might be hiding something from us. But whatever it is, I want you to promise me something. Don't go looking for trouble. Don't cause drama. Sometimes it's better to let sleeping dogs lie." Her timing was so perfectly ironic that I almost laughed, but the pain was too fresh, too raw. If only she knew that I'd already found the trouble she was warning me against, that the sleeping dogs were already wide awake and howling. Instead, I just nodded and promised to be careful, adding another lie to the growing pile that seemed to define our family's communication. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the folder of documents hidden in my closet like a bomb waiting to explode. Tomorrow I would have to decide what to do with the information that had the power to destroy everything I'd believed about my family. But tonight I was still Elena Martinez, beloved daughter and sister, living in a world where Dad was a devoted husband and father who would never hurt us. Tomorrow I would have to become someone else entirely, the daughter who discovered her father's second family, the sister who had to decide whether to protect Carmen from the truth or prepare her for it, the child who had to choose between preserving her mother's happiness and honoring her own need for honesty. The transformation felt terrifying and inevitable, like standing at the edge of a cliff with no choice but to jump. My old life was ending, and whatever came next would be built on the rubble of everything I'd once believed to be true. The next morning brought no relief from the chaos in my mind. I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck, my eyes swollen from crying myself to sleep. The folder was still in my closet, and for a brief moment I wondered if the whole thing had been a nightmare, but the sick feeling in my stomach told me otherwise. I called in sick to work, something I rarely did, but I couldn't imagine sitting through client meetings and design reviews when my entire world had shifted on its axis. Instead, I spent the morning pacing my apartment, rehearsing what I would say to Dad when I confronted him. Every scenario I imagined ended badly. Miguel called around noon, concerned about my absence from work and my distracted behavior the night before. I'd barely spoken during our usual Sunday evening video call, claiming I was tired. Now he was worried I was getting sick or stressed about something. "You sound terrible, Elena. What's going on?" His voice was gentle, caring, the voice of someone who loved me and wanted to help. But how could I explain that everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie? How could I tell him that the man I'd held up as an example of integrity and devotion had been living a double life for longer than I'd been alive? "I just need some time to process something," I told him, hating how evasive I sounded. "Family stuff. I'll call you tonight, okay?" Miguel didn't push, which was one of the things I loved about him. He trusted me to come to him when I was ready to talk, but his patience made me feel even worse about the secret I was now carrying. Was this how it started? One small omission, one withheld truth, that grew into decades of deception? By afternoon, I couldn't take the uncertainty anymore. I drove to Dad's office, knowing he'd be there doing paperwork and preparing for the week ahead. His truck was parked outside the small building he rented near the warehouse district, and I could see him through the window, bent over invoices at his desk. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed the folder from my passenger seat and walked inside. Dad looked up with a smile when he heard the door chime, but his expression changed immediately when he saw what I was carrying. "Elena, Mija, what brings you by today?" His voice was carefully neutral, but I could see the recognition in his eyes. He knew exactly what was in that folder. I set it down on his desk without saying a word, watching as his face went pale. For a long moment we just stared at each other across the desk that had seemed so familiar just yesterday. Now it felt like a courtroom, with evidence spread between us that would determine the fate of our family. "How long have you known?" he asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Since yesterday. I came to get your insurance papers, and this fell out of the filing cabinet." My voice sounded strange to my own ears, too calm for the magnitude of what we were discussing. 25 years, Dad. You've been lying to us for 25 years. He closed his eyes and leaned back in his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 55 years and more. "It's not what you think, Elena. It's complicated." "Complicated?" The word came out sharper than I intended. "You have another daughter. Another family. You've been sending them money, visiting them, living a completely separate life while Mom worked double shifts and Carmen and I struggled to pay for college. What part of that is complicated?" Dad opened his eyes and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not the confident father who always had answers, but a broken man who'd been caught in a web of his own making. "Sit down, Mija, please. Let me explain." I remained standing, arms crossed, fighting the urge to either scream or cry. "Go ahead, explain how you justify having two families." Explain how you look mom in the eye every day knowing you're married to someone else in all but name. Explain how you taught me about honesty while living the biggest lie imaginable. I'm not married to Isabella, he said quietly. I never was. Sophie is my daughter, yes, but Isabella and I were never married. That makes it better? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You think that somehow makes this less of a betrayal? Dad stood up and walked to the window, his back to me. You want the truth? The whole truth? It started 26 years ago when your mother and I were going through a very difficult time. We had separated, Elena. We were talking about divorce. I felt like the ground was shifting beneath my feet. What? You and Mom separated? When? I don't remember any separation. You were only 2 years old. We tried to keep it from affecting you, but things were bad between your mother and me. Really bad. She wanted children desperately, and we'd been trying for years after you were born. Every month that went by without a pregnancy, every negative test, it drove us further apart. He turned back to face me, tears in his eyes. Your mother was working so much, trying to distract herself from the pain. I was building the business, working 18-hour days. We were like strangers living in the same house. Finally, she asked me to leave. Said she needed space to figure out what she wanted. I sank into the chair across from his desk, the anger temporarily replaced by shock. You never told us any of this. What was the point? We worked things out eventually. But during those 6 months we were separated, I went to Phoenix to help my cousin Eduardo with his landscaping business. He was sick, needed someone to run things temporarily. That's where I met Isabella. Dad sat back down, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. She was going through her own divorce, had a little boy from her previous marriage. We were both lonely, both hurting. It was supposed to be temporary, just comfort for two broken people. But then Isabella got pregnant. So you had an affair while you were separated from Mom, I said slowly, trying to process the timeline. And Isabella got pregnant with Sophie. Yes. But by then, your mother and I were talking about reconciliation. She was pregnant with Carmen, had been for 2 months, but hadn't told me yet. When she finally called to give me the news, I was standing in a Phoenix hospital room, holding my newborn daughter. The timeline was staggering. Carmen and Sophie, born just 2 months apart, to 2 different mothers. Dad caught between 2 families that were both counting on him. Why didn't you just choose? I asked. Why didn't you divorce Mom and marry Isabella, or come back to Sacramento and cut ties with Phoenix? Dad's face crumpled. How could I choose? Carmen was my daughter too, and you needed your father. But Sophie was innocent in all this, and Isabella had no one else. Her ex-husband had abandoned their son, left them with nothing. I couldn't be another man who walked away from his responsibilities. So instead you decided to lie to everyone for the next 25 years? I tried to tell your mother, he said desperately. When I came back to Sacramento, I sat her down and started to explain about Isabella and Sophie. But she was so happy about the reconciliation, so excited about Carmen's birth, so hopeful about our future. She kept saying how grateful she was, that our separation had made me realize how much I loved our family. How much I wanted to be with her and you? He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. And then she told me she was scared she might lose the baby. She'd had some spotting, was on bed rest. The doctor said stress could cause a miscarriage. How could I tell her about Sophie when it might kill Carmen? I stared at him, beginning to understand the impossible position he'd found himself in, but still unable to forgive the decades of deception that followed. But Carmen was born healthy. You could have told Mom then. By then, Isabella was struggling. Sophie was colicky, barely sleeping. Isabella was working 2 jobs trying to make ends meet, and her son was acting out, angry about the divorce and the new baby. She needed help, and Sophie was my daughter. I couldn't abandon them. So you sent money. I sent money. And I visited when I could, told your mother I was developing business contacts in Arizona. It was supposed to be temporary. Just until Isabella got on her feet and could manage on her own. I laughed bitterly. Temporary. 25 years of temporary. It got easier to maintain the lie than to confess it, Dad admitted. Years went by and both families needed me. You and Carmen were thriving, your mother was happy, the business was growing. In Phoenix, Sophie was growing up knowing her father. Isabella had built a good life for herself and her son. Everyone was okay as long as I kept the two worlds separate. But we weren't okay, Dad. We struggled financially. Mom worked herself to exhaustion. Carmen and I had to take out loans for college while you were paying for Sophie's education too, weren't you? He nodded miserably. Sophie graduated from Arizona State last year, veterinary science. While Carmen is still paying off her teaching degree and I'm living in a tiny apartment because I can't afford anything bigger. The anger was returning, hot and fierce. You made choices about our lives without telling us. You decided that Sophie deserved your financial support while your Sacramento family just had to make do with whatever was left over. It wasn't like that, Dad protested. I never gave Sophie more than I gave you and Carmen. I made sure both families had what they needed. Both families shouldn't have existed. I stood up again, too agitated to sit still. You should have made a choice 25 years ago instead of living this elaborate lie that hurt everyone involved. You think Isabella hasn't been hurt by this? You think Sophie doesn't wonder why her father can only visit on weekends? You think it's been easy for any of us? I stared at him in disbelief. Are you actually asking me to feel sorry for you right now? You created this situation, Dad. Every bit of pain that's come from it is because of choices you made. I know, he said quietly. I know I've made mistakes. But Elena, I love all of my children. I love your mother, and I love Isabella too, in a different way. I never meant for it to go on this long, but every time I thought about coming clean, someone needed me to stay quiet. Someone always needs you to stay quiet, I said. That's how secrets work, Dad. There's never a good time to tell the truth, so you just keep lying until the truth finds its way out on its own. We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of 25 years of deception hanging between us. Finally, I asked the question that had been haunting me since I'd found the documents. Does Mom know? Dad's hesitation told me everything I needed to know before he even answered. I think she suspects something. She's too smart not to notice the patterns, the money, the trips, but she's never asked directly, and I've never confirmed it. So she's chosen not to know, the same way you've chosen not to tell her. Your mother is a practical woman, Elena. She knows that some truths are more destructive than the lies they replace. I thought about Mom's warning the night before, her insistence that some stones were better left unturned. Had she been talking about Dad's secrets specifically? Or was she just speaking from the general wisdom of someone who'd learned to navigate around painful truths? What about Sophie? I asked. What does she know about us? Dad looked even more uncomfortable. She knows I have other children. She knows I was married before her mother and I got together. But she thinks you and Carmen are from a previous marriage that ended badly, that your mother won't let me see you very often. So, she thinks Mom is the villain in this story. I never said your mother was a villain. I just said it was complicated. You let your daughter in Phoenix think that your wife in Sacramento is keeping you from your children, while you let your wife in Sacramento think you're just a devoted businessman who works too hard. I shook my head in amazement. Do you even realize how manipulative that is? I was trying to protect everyone, Dad said defensively. You were trying to protect yourself. I shot back. You didn't want to deal with the consequences of your choices, so you made everyone else live with the consequences instead. Dad slumped in his chair, looking defeated. What do you want me to do, Elena? How do I fix this? I don't know if you can fix it, I said honestly. I don't know if any of us can come back from this, but it starts with telling the truth. All of it. To everyone. If I tell your mother about Sophie, it will destroy our marriage. Your marriage is already built on a lie, Dad. Maybe it needs to be destroyed so something real can take its place. And what about Sophie? What about Isabella? If I come clean to your mother, do I tell them too? Do I explain that I've been lying to them about our situation for 25 years? The complexity of the situation was staggering. Dad wasn't just lying to one family about the other. He was lying to both families about each other. Sophie thought we were estranged children from a bitter divorce. We thought she didn't exist. Isabella probably thought she was in a committed relationship with a man who was separated or divorced from his previous wife. Mom thought Dad was completely devoted to our family. That's the problem with lies, Dad. They multiply. Now you have to hurt everyone to tell the truth. But continuing to lie hurts everyone, too. I know, he whispered. I've known for years that this day would come. I just kept hoping I could find a way to make it work without anyone getting hurt. I looked at my father, this man I'd admired my entire life, and felt a grief so profound it took my breath away. Not just grief for the father I'd lost, but grief for the man he could have been if he'd made different choices 25 years ago. There's something else, he said quietly. Something that makes this even more complicated. I couldn't imagine how the situation could get more complicated, but I braced myself for whatever revelation was coming next. Sophie is pregnant. She's getting married in 3 months, and she wants me to walk her down the aisle. The words hit me like a physical blow. While I'd been planning my own future with Miguel, my secret sister had been planning a wedding that our father would attend. While Carmen and I dreamed about our eventual weddings and joked about what kind of father of the bride speech Dad would give, he was already preparing to give that speech for a daughter we'd never met. Does Isabella know about us? I asked. She knows I have children from a previous relationship, but she thinks it ended badly and that you don't want contact with me. So everyone thinks someone else is the problem, I said. Sophie thinks Mom is vindictive. Isabella thinks Carmen and I are ungrateful. Mom thinks you're just a hard-working businessman. Carmen and I thought we had the perfect father. Everyone has been living in a fantasy built on lies. Dad nodded miserably. I know how it sounds, Elena. I know how wrong it's been. But I genuinely love all of you. Every single one of you. I never meant to hurt anyone. Intention doesn't matter when the result is this much pain, Dad. I gathered up the documents and put them back in the folder. I need time to think about this. I need to decide what to do with this information. Elena, please. Dad stood up as I headed toward the door. Please don't tell your mother and Carmen yet. Give me some time to figure out how to handle this. How much time? I asked. Another 25 years? Just a few weeks. Let me figure out the right way to tell everyone. Let me prepare Sophie and Isabella for the truth, too. I paused at the door, considering his request. Part of me wanted to march straight to Mom's hospital and tell her everything immediately. But another part of me recognized that this revelation would destroy multiple lives, and maybe Dad deserved the chance to control how that destruction happened. 2 weeks, I said finally. You have 2 weeks to figure out how you're going to tell the truth to everyone involved. If you haven't done it by then, I will. Elena, wait. There's something else you need to know. I turned back, dreading whatever new revelation was coming. Sophie's baby is due in December. She wants to name the baby Carmen if it's a girl, after her father's other daughter that she's never met. She's always wondered about you and your sister, always hoped that someday we could all be a family. The irony was devastating. While Carmen had no idea she had a sister, that sister was planning to honor her by naming her baby after her. While I was struggling with anger and betrayal, Sophie was hoping for reconciliation with family members she'd never met. She's a good person, Elena, Dad continued. Just like you and Carmen, she's kind and smart and funny. In another world, you three would be the best of friends. But this isn't another world, Dad. This is the world you created with your choices. And in this world, the sister I never knew exists is pregnant with your grandchild, planning a wedding you'll attend, living a life that includes you in ways Carmen and I never fully understood. I left the office without saying goodbye, my mind reeling with new information and impossible decisions. 2 weeks to figure out how to handle the destruction of everything I'd believed about my family. 2 weeks to decide whether to protect Carmen's innocence a little longer, or prepare her for the devastation that was coming. 2 weeks to figure out whether Mom deserved to know the truth or to be protected from it. The drive home was a blur of tears and rage and confusion. I found myself thinking about Sophie, this sister who was planning to name her daughter after Carmen, who hoped for family reconciliation, who had no idea that her father's other family didn't even know she existed. How would she react when she learned that Dad had been lying to her too? How would she feel knowing that her wedding would be attended by a father who was living a completely separate life just a few hours away? That evening, Miguel came over with Chinese takeout and flowers, concerned about my absence from work and my distracted behavior. I managed to get through dinner without breaking down, but when he asked if I wanted to talk about whatever was bothering me, I almost told him everything. "It's family stuff," I said instead. "Something I found out about my dad that changes everything I thought I knew about him." Miguel reached across the table and took my hand. "Do you want to talk about it?" I looked into his kind, honest eyes and felt the weight of the secret I was now carrying. How could I tell him that my father, the man he'd been planning to ask for my hand in marriage, had been living a double life for longer than we'd been alive? How could I explain that everything he thought he knew about my family was built on deception? "Not yet," I said. "I need to process it first. But Miguel, I need you to know that whatever happens in the next few weeks, whatever you find out about my family, it doesn't change how I feel about you." He squeezed my hand. "Elena, you're scaring me. Is your dad okay? Is he sick?" "He's not sick, at least not physically, but things are about to get very complicated for my family, and I don't know how it's all going to work out." Miguel studied my face with the careful attention of someone who'd learned to read my moods over 3 years together. "Does this have something to do with why your mom warned you not to cause drama yesterday?" I stared at him in surprise. I'd forgotten that I'd told him about Mom's comment during our brief phone call that morning. "Maybe," I admitted. "I think Mom might know something she doesn't want to deal with." "And you found out what that something is." "I found out that my father isn't the man I thought he was," I said, the words feeling like glass in my throat. "And I don't know how to live with that knowledge." Miguel moved to the couch beside me and pulled me into his arms. "Whatever it is, Elena, we'll figure it out together. You don't have to carry this alone." His kindness made me cry, which I'd been trying not to do. In his arms, I let myself grieve for the father I'd lost, the family I'd thought I had, the simple future I'd been planning that was now complicated by secrets and lies and impossible choices. "I love you," I whispered into his shoulder. "Whatever happens, I need you to know that I love you and I want to build something real with you. Something honest." "I love you too," he said, stroking my hair. "And whatever your father has done, it doesn't change who you are or what we have together." But it did change things, in ways Miguel couldn't understand yet. It changed my ability to trust, my faith in the institution of marriage, my belief in the possibility of lasting commitment. If my father could lie to 2 families for 25 years, what did that say about the nature of love and loyalty? What did it say about the promises people make to each other? That night I lay awake thinking about Sophie and wondering what kind of person she was. Was she as stubborn as Carmen? Did she have my artistic streak? Did she worry about the future the way I did? Or was she more optimistic like Dad? Was she excited about her wedding? Or was she nervous about the complications of blending families that she didn't fully understand? I found myself wondering if Sophie looked like us, if strangers would recognize us as sisters if we walked down the street together. I wondered if she had Dad's laugh and Mom's eyes, or if she looked more like Isabella. I wondered if she played soccer like I had, or if she preferred quieter activities like Carmen's reading and crafts. The questions kept coming. An endless stream of curiosity about the sister I'd never known existed. What was her favorite food? Did she speak Spanish as fluently as Carmen and I did? Was she dating someone Dad approved of, or was there tension about her choices the way there sometimes was with my relationships? Did she call him Papa or Dad, or some other variation that was uniquely theirs? Most painfully, I wondered if Dad was a better father to Sophie than he'd been to Carmen and me. Not because he loved her more, but because he'd learned from his mistakes with us, refined his parenting approach through experience. Did she get the improved version of Roberto Martinez while we got the rough draft? I thought about all the ways our lives might have been different if we'd known about each other from the beginning. Would Sophie have come to Sacramento for holidays? Would Carmen and I have visited Phoenix during summer vacations? Would we have been close friends or competitive siblings? Would knowing about Dad's divided attention have made us more understanding of his absences, or would it have made us more resentful? The practical questions were overwhelming too. If Dad died tomorrow, would Sophie inherit part of the business? Were there legal documents we didn't know about that gave her claim to assets we'd assumed belonged to our immediate family? If Mom and Dad divorced when the truth came out, how would property be divided when half of it had been secretly supporting another family for decades? I realized I needed to talk to someone, but I wasn't sure who. Carmen was too innocent, too trusting. The revelation would devastate her, and I wasn't ready to be responsible for destroying her faith in our family. Mom might already know, which would make the conversation awkward and painful in different ways. Miguel was supportive, but couldn't truly understand the cultural and family dynamics involved. Finally, I decided to call my cousin Sophia, Dad's niece who lived in Los Angeles. Sophia was a few years older than me, had always been more like a sister than a cousin. She was also a therapist, trained to handle difficult family situations with objectivity and compassion. Sophia, it's Elena. I need to talk to someone, and I think you're the only person who might understand. Of course, Prima. What's going on? I took a deep breath and told her everything. The discovery of the documents, the conversation with Dad, the impossible complexity of the situation, the deadline I'd given him to come clean to everyone involved. Sophia listened without interrupting, making small sounds of sympathy and shock as the story unfolded. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Elena, I'm so sorry. This is devastating. Did you know? I asked. Did anyone in the family know about Sophie? No, Sophia said firmly. I had no idea. But now that you've told me, some things make more sense. Uncle Roberto's mysterious business trips. The way he sometimes seemed distracted during family gatherings. The financial stress your family went through even though the business was doing well. I feel like such an idiot for not seeing the signs. Don't blame yourself. You trusted your father because that's what children do. He's the one who betrayed that trust. Sophia's validation helped, but it didn't solve the immediate problem of what to do next. Do you think I should tell your mom and Carmen before the 2 weeks are up? I asked. That's really complicated, Prima. On one hand, they have a right to know. On the other hand, your dad is right, that this revelation will devastate multiple lives. Maybe giving him time to figure out how to minimize the damage isn't a bad idea. But what if he doesn't tell them? What if he uses the 2 weeks to come up with new lies or ways to cover this up? Then you tell them yourself, exactly like you promised. But Elena, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that this might destroy your family as you know it. I know, I whispered. I'm already grieving for the family I thought I had. Have you thought about reaching out to Sophie directly? Sophia asked. The question surprised me. What would I say? Hi, I'm your secret sister that our father has been lying to you about for 25 years? It might be easier than you think. She's planning to name her baby Carmen, which suggests she has positive feelings about you and your sister. Maybe she'd welcome contact. I hadn't considered that possibility, but Sophia was right. Sophie's desire to honor Carmen with her baby's name suggested she thought of us fondly, even if she didn't know the full truth about our situation. What if reaching out to her makes everything worse? I asked. Elena, I don't think this situation can get much worse. Right now, everyone is living a lie. At least if you contact Sophie, 2 people will know the truth. After we hung up, I found myself staring at my laptop, considering Sophia's suggestion. It would be easy to find Sophie on social media, to see more recent photos, to learn about her life beyond what Dad's secret documents revealed. But was I ready for that? Was I prepared to open a relationship with a sister I'd never met, while my relationship with the father we shared was falling apart? The next few days passed in a haze of distraction and anxiety. I went through the motions of work and normal life, but my mind was constantly on the countdown Dad had been given. 12 days left. 11 days. 10 days. Each day that passed without him telling the truth felt like another small betrayal. Carmen called midweek, bubbling with excitement about her boyfriend's proposal plans. She'd found the ring receipt in his jacket pocket and was pretending not to know while dying to share the news with someone. Elena, I think David is going to propose next weekend. Can you believe it? I'm going to be engaged. Listening to my sister's joy while knowing that her entire understanding of love and family was about to be shattered felt like torture. How could I celebrate her happiness when I knew that in a few days she might not believe in marriage at all? "That's wonderful, Carmen," I managed. "David is a suppa cha. Good guy. You'll be happy together." "I want to have the engagement party at Mom and Dad's house," she continued. "You know how much I love our family traditions. I want to celebrate with everyone who's important to me." The irony was painful. Carmen wanted to celebrate her engagement surrounded by family, not knowing that our family was much larger and more complicated than she realized. Dad would attend her engagement party knowing that in a few months, he'd be walking another daughter down the aisle at a wedding Carmen would never be invited to. "Have you told Mom and Dad about the proposal?" I asked. "Not yet. I want to let David do it properly. But Elena, I'm so excited to plan a wedding with Mom. You know how she's always dreamed about our weddings, how she's been saving ideas in that scrapbook for years." I thought about Mom's wedding scrapbook, filled with clippings and photos and dreams for her daughters, special days. Did she know that Dad had already walked one daughter down the aisle in his heart, that he was planning to do it literally in 3 months? Did she realize that the father-daughter dance she'd been looking forward to wouldn't be his first? "Carmen, can I ask you something?" I said impulsively. "Of course. Do you ever think Dad seems distracted lately? Like he's carrying some kind of burden?" Carmen was quiet for a moment. "Actually, yes. I thought it was just work stress or his back problems. But he does seem sadder lately, more distant. Why do you ask?" "I just wondered if you'd noticed it too. Elena, do you know something? Is Dad okay?" I almost told her everything right then. The words were on the tip of my tongue, the urge to share this impossible burden nearly overwhelming. But I thought about her engagement plans, her excitement about building a life with David, her faith in love and family, that this revelation would destroy. "I think he's just getting older," I said instead. "Maybe feeling the weight of providing for all of us." "Well, once David and I are married, I'll be off his financial responsibility list," Carmen said cheerfully. "That should help with the stress." After we hung up, I realized that Carmen's upcoming engagement made the timeline even more critical. If she got engaged while Dad was still keeping his secret, their celebration would be tainted by the lies underlying our family. But if the truth came out before the engagement, it might destroy Carmen's faith in marriage altogether. There was no good timing for this revelation. Every scenario I imagined involved tremendous pain for people I loved. 7 days left on Dad's deadline. 6 days. 5 days. On day 4, I made a decision that would change everything. I opened my laptop and searched for Sophie Martinez on social media. She wasn't hard to find. Her profile picture showed a young woman with Dad's eyes and Carmen's smile, wearing scrubs with a veterinary clinic logo. She looked happy, confident, loved. Her recent posts showed photos with a young man who was clearly her fiancé, pictures of their new apartment, excitement about their upcoming wedding. Her feed was filled with the normal life of a 25-year-old professional. Photos with friends, complaints about work, excitement about her pregnancy, love for her fiancé. But scattered throughout were references to her father that broke my heart. "Dad's visiting this weekend, can't wait to show him the wedding venue. My father always told me to marry someone who makes me laugh. Found him. Dad's giving me away in 3 months, already crying thinking about that dance." Sophie clearly adored our father, had no idea that his visits were stolen time from another family, that his advice about marriage came from a man living a double life. She was innocent in all this, as much a victim of Dad's deception as Carmen and I were. I stared at her photos for an hour, memorizing the face of the sister I'd never known existed. She was beautiful, looked like she could be Carmen's twin, despite being born to a different mother. Her eyes had Dad's warmth, her smile had Mom's kindness, even though Mom wasn't her mother. Finally, I made a decision that I knew would change everything. I sent her a private message. "Hi Sophie, my name is Elena Martinez. I think we need to talk about our father." Sophie's response came faster than I expected. Within 2 hours of sending my message, my phone buzzed with a notification that made my heart race. "Elena? Oh my God, is this really happening? Are you really my sister? I've been hoping to hear from you for years. Can we video chat? I have so many questions. Her enthusiasm was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. Here was my sister, excited to finally connect with family she'd been told wanted nothing to do with her, while I was the bearer of news that would shatter her understanding of our father just as completely as mine had been destroyed. I agreed to the video chat, and within minutes I was staring at a face that could have been Carmen's reflection. Sophie had the same animated expressions, the same way of tilting her head when she was thinking, even the same nervous habit of tucking her hair behind her ear. I can't believe this is really happening, Sophie said, tears already streaming down her face. Dad said you and Carmen never wanted to meet me, that your mother was bitter about the divorce and turned you against him. I've been hoping for years that maybe when you got older, you'd reach out. My heart sank. Dad's lies were even more elaborate than I'd realized. Sophie, I need to tell you something important. Dad never told us about you. We didn't know you existed until 4 days ago. Her smile faltered. What do you mean? He said he told you about me years ago, that you weren't interested in having a relationship. We had no idea. Carmen and I grew up thinking we were Dad's only children. He never mentioned you, never talked about having another daughter. Sophie's face went pale. That can't be right. He said he was divorced from your mother, that the split was messy, but that he maintained a relationship with you both. He said you knew about me but weren't ready for contact yet. Sophie, our parents aren't divorced. They're still married. They've been married for 30 years. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched my sister process this information, her expression cycling through confusion, disbelief, and dawning horror. That's impossible, she whispered. Dad wouldn't lie about something like that. He's the most honest person I know. I felt sick delivering this news to someone who clearly loved our father as much as I had. I found documents in his office. Birth certificates, custody agreements, financial records. Sophie. He's been living a double life for 25 years. But he visits every other weekend. He's been part of my life since I was born. He walked me through every major milestone, helped me through college, gave me advice about my relationship with Jake. He's planning to walk me down the aisle in 3 months. The pain in her voice was unbearable. I know. And he did all the same things for Carmen and me, during the weeks when he wasn't with you. We celebrated holidays together, family vacations, Sunday dinners. We thought we were his whole world. Sophie was crying now, the same devastated tears I'd cried 4 days earlier. So everything he told me about your family was a lie? You don't hate me? Your mother isn't vindictive? We don't hate you. We never even knew you existed to have feelings about you one way or the other. And Mom has no idea about any of this. She thinks Dad goes to Phoenix for business. Oh God, Sophie said, putting her head in her hands. Jake and I are getting married in 3 months. I'm 3 months pregnant. I thought Dad was finally going to introduce me to his other daughters at the wedding. I was so excited to meet you both. My heart broke for her. While Carmen was planning an engagement celebration with our family, Sophie was planning a wedding where she expected to finally meet the sisters she'd been told didn't want to know her. Sophie, I'm so sorry. I know this is devastating. It's been devastating for me too. She looked up, wiping her eyes. Does Carmen know yet? Remember, I gave Dad 2 weeks to figure out how to tell everyone the truth. That was 4 days ago, so we have 10 days left. And if he doesn't tell everyone? Then I will. This can't continue. Too many people have been hurt by these lies for too long. Sophie was quiet for several minutes, and I could see her processing the magnitude of the deception. Finally, she spoke again. Elena, can I ask you something? What kind of father was he to you and Carmen? Was he good to you? The question caught me off guard. He was a wonderful father. Supportive, involved, loving. He never missed important events. Always made time for us, taught us values about honesty and integrity. I paused, recognizing the irony. What kind of father was he to you? The same, she said softly. He was everything I could have wanted in a dad. He taught me to drive, helped me with homework, came to every soccer game. supported my dreams of becoming a veterinarian. I thought I was so lucky to have such a devoted father, despite the complicated family situation. We sat in silence, both grappling with the realization that our father had somehow managed to be genuinely loving and present for both families while living an elaborate lie that spanned decades. Sophie, there's something else you should know. Your middle name wouldn't happen to be Carmen, would it? She looked surprised. How did you know that? Dad said he named me after his grandmother. Because Carmen is my sister's name. Our sister's name. Dad named you after the daughter he had in Sacramento. Sophie's eyes widened. So I'm named after her? All this time, I thought I was named after some great-grandmother I'd never met, but I was actually named after my sister? It appears so. And Sophie, Carmen is planning to name her first daughter Sophie if she has one. She's always loved that name but never knew why. The cosmic irony was almost too much to bear. Both sisters had been honoring each other without knowing the other existed, connected through a father who had kept them apart while somehow weaving their lives together in invisible ways. I need to call Mom, Sophie said suddenly. I need to ask her what she knew about this. Isabella is your mom's name, right? Yes. And Elena, I think she knew more than she let on. There were always things that didn't quite add up about Dad's situation. The fact that he could only visit on weekends, that he never invited us to Sacramento, that he was always vague about why his relationship with you and Carmen was so strained. What did she tell you about us? That your mother was bitter about the divorce and had turned you against Dad, that you blamed him for the failure of their marriage and weren't ready to forgive him yet. She always said that someday, when you were mature enough, you'd reach out and want a relationship. I realized that Isabella was as much a victim in this as the rest of us. Dad had convinced her that he was divorced, that his ex-wife was vindictive, that his older children were estranged by choice rather than by deception. Sophie, I think your mom was lied to as well. I don't think she knew Dad was still married. But they've been together for 26 years. How could she not know? The same way Carmen and I didn't know about you. Dad is apparently very good at compartmentalizing his life and managing information so that each family only knows what he wants them to know. Sophie leaned back in her chair, looking overwhelmed. So everyone has been living a lie. You thought you had the perfect family. I thought I had a devoted father who was dealing with a complicated situation with his ex-wife. Mom thought she was in a committed relationship with a man who was free to be with her. And Dad somehow convinced himself that he was protecting everyone by keeping us all in the dark. Elena, what happens now? Do I call off my wedding? Do I tell Jake that my entire family situation is built on lies? Do I tell my mom that the man she's been with for 26 years is married to someone else? The questions were overwhelming, and I didn't have answers for any of them. I don't know, Sophie. I honestly don't know how we move forward from this. Can I ask you something else? Are you angry with me? For existing, I mean. For being the reason your family struggled financially. Her question broke my heart. Sophie, none of this is your fault. You were an innocent child, born into a situation you didn't create. I'm angry with Dad for his choices, but I could never be angry with you for existing. But if I hadn't been born, your family would have been better off financially. You and Carmen could have gone to college without loans. Your mom wouldn't have had to work so many double shifts. And if Carmen and I hadn't existed, Dad could have been fully present for your family without the complications of dividing his time and resources. We're all victims of his deception, Sophie. None of us asked for this situation. She smiled through her tears. You know, I always wondered what it would be like to have sisters. I dreamed about it sometimes, especially when I was younger and felt lonely. Carmen and I used to joke about wanting a sister who was closer to our age. Carmen is 3 years younger than me, so I was always the big sister. I sometimes wondered what it would be like to have an older sister. I'm only 3 years younger than you too, Sophie said. We could have grown up together. The thought was both beautiful and heartbreaking. In another world, one where Dad had made different choices 25 years ago, Sophie, Carmen, and I could have been the 3 sisters we'd all dreamed of having. Sophie, I want you to know something. When I saw your photos, saw how happy you looked, saw what a good person you clearly are, I felt proud. Proud to have you as a sister, even if I'd never known you existed. Really? Really, you're beautiful and accomplished and clearly loved by the people in your life. Dad may have made terrible choices about how to handle this situation, but he raised a wonderful daughter in you. Sophie was crying again, but they seemed like happier tears. I felt the same way when I found your social media after you messaged me. You and Carmen both seem like such incredible women. I kept thinking about how much I would have loved growing up with sisters like you. We talked for 2 more hours, sharing stories about our childhoods, our relationships, our dreams for the future. Despite the devastating circumstances that had brought us together, I found myself genuinely liking Sophie. She was funny and kind and intelligent, with the same dry sense of humor that Carmen and I shared. She told me about her work at the veterinary clinic, her excitement about her pregnancy, her love for Jake, who worked as a high school math teacher. I told her about my job in graphic design, my relationship with Miguel, Carmen's work with kindergartners. As we shared these details of our lives, I was struck by how similar we were, despite growing up in different states, with different mothers. We all had Dad's work ethic, his sense of humor, his stubbornness. We all valued family, even though our understanding of what constituted our family had been fundamentally wrong. Elena, I want to meet Carmen, Sophie said as our conversation was winding down. I know this is all complicated and painful, but I want to know my sister. I want that too. But Sophie, I have to warn you. Carmen is more innocent than I am, more trusting. This news is going to devastate her. She's also getting engaged soon, so the timing is particularly difficult. Engaged? That's wonderful. To someone nice? Very nice. David is perfect for her. They're planning to have the engagement party at Mom and Dad's house, which is going to be complicated given everything that's happening. Will you tell Carmen about me before Dad's deadline is up? I had been wrestling with this question for days. I think I have to. She deserves to know the truth, and she deserves to hear it from me, rather than in some chaotic family meeting where everyone is angry and emotional. And your mom? Do you think she really doesn't know about me? I'm not sure. She warned me a few days ago not to cause drama, not to go looking for trouble. It might have been general advice, or it might have been specific to this situation. Elena, can I say something? I know this is all terrible and painful, but I'm grateful you found those documents. I'm grateful we're finally talking. I've wanted to know you and Carmen my entire life. I'm grateful too, Sophie. And I'm sorry it took 25 years for us to meet. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment feeling emotionally drained but somehow lighter. Meeting Sophie had been wonderful despite the circumstances. She was everything I could have hoped for in a sister, and I was already looking forward to talking with her again. But the reality of our situation was still overwhelming. Dad had 8 days left to tell everyone the truth, and I was beginning to doubt that he would actually do it. The longer he waited, the more complicated the revelation would become. I decided I couldn't wait any longer to tell Carmen. She deserved to know about Sophie before Dad's deadline expired, and she deserved to hear it from me in a private, supportive environment rather than in the chaos that would surely follow if Dad continued to delay. I called Carmen and asked her to come over for dinner the next evening. I told her I had something important to discuss with her, something about our family that she needed to know. Elena, you're scaring me. Is someone sick? Is Dad okay? Dad is physically fine, I said carefully. But Carmen, there are things about our family that you don't know. Things that are going to be difficult to hear. What kind of things? I'll explain everything tomorrow night. Just come over around 7, okay? And, Carmen, bring some tissues. That night, I called Miguel and told him I needed to talk to him about the family situation I'd been dealing with. He came over immediately, and I found myself telling him everything. The discovery of the documents, the confrontation with Dad, the conversation with Sophie, the deadline I'd given Dad to come clean. Miguel listened without interrupting, his expression growing more shocked and concerned as the story unfolded. Elena, this is huge, he said when I finished. This changes everything about your family. I know. I keep waiting to wake up and discover it was all a nightmare. How are you holding up? Really? I considered the question. I'm angry and hurt and confused. But Miguel, meeting Sophie was actually wonderful. She's amazing, and I can already tell we're going to be close once we get through all this chaos. And your dad? How do you feel about him now? I love him because he's my father, and he raised me well. But I don't trust him anymore. And I don't know if I ever will again. How do you forgive someone for 25 years of lies? Miguel pulled me close. You don't have to figure out forgiveness right now. You just have to get through the next week. Miguel, I need you to know that this might affect our relationship. Not because I love you any less, but because learning that my father has been living a double life for my entire existence makes it hard to trust in the possibility of lasting commitment. Elena, look at me, he said, taking my face in his hands. I am not your father. What he did doesn't reflect on what we have together. If anything, his deception shows you how important honesty is in a relationship. I know that logically. But emotionally, it's going to take time for me to process all this. Then we'll take all the time you need. Elena, I love you. Not your family, not your father's business, not any of the complications that come with being Roberto Martinez's daughter. I love you for who you are. His words helped, but I still felt like I was standing on shifting ground. Everything I'd believed about love, family, and commitment had been challenged by Dad's revelation. The next evening, Carmen arrived at my apartment with takeout and her characteristic, cheerful energy. She'd brought Mexican food from our favorite restaurant and flowers from her school's garden. Okay, what's this big family secret, she said, settling onto my couch. Did Dad have another heart attack scare? Did Mom decide to quit her job? Did you find out we're secretly rich? I looked at my baby sister, so trusting and optimistic, and felt my heart break for what I was about to do to her. Carmen, what I'm about to tell you is going to change everything you believe about our family. It's going to hurt, and it's going to be confusing, and you're going to be angry. Her smile faded. Elena, you're really scaring me now. I pulled out the folder of documents I'd taken from Dad's office and set it on the coffee table between us. 4 days ago, I found these in Dad's filing cabinet. Carmen, we have a sister. A 25-year-old sister named Sophie who lives in Phoenix with her mother Isabella. Dad has been supporting them financially and visiting them regularly for Sophie's entire life. Carmen stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. What do you mean we have a sister? I mean, Dad has another daughter. She was born 2 months after you, while Mom was pregnant with you. He's been living a double life for 25 years. I watched my sister's face cycle through the same emotions I'd experienced when I first discovered the truth. Confusion, disbelief, denial, and finally, devastating comprehension. That's impossible, Carmen whispered. Dad wouldn't do that. He's not that kind of person. I thought the same thing. But Carmen, the evidence is overwhelming. Birth certificates, custody agreements, financial records, photographs. Sophie is our sister. Carmen picked up the folder with shaking hands and began looking through the documents. I watched her face as she processed each piece of evidence, each proof of Dad's deception. This is her, she said, holding up a photograph of Sophie at her college graduation. She looks just like me. I know. When I first saw her pictures, I thought they were old photos of you that I didn't recognize. Carmen continued flipping through the documents, her expression growing more devastated with each revelation. He's been sending them money for 25 years, while we struggled to pay for college? Yes. Carmen, I talked to Sophie yesterday. She's a veterinarian, she's engaged, and she's pregnant. She's wonderful, and she's just as much a victim of Dad's lies as we are. She knows about us? She knew Dad had other children, but he told her we were estranged from him by choice. He told her Mom was bitter about their divorce and had turned us against him. Carmen's face went white. Divorce? Dad told her he was divorced from Mom? Everyone has been living a lie, Carmen. Sophie thought Dad was divorced. Her mother thought Dad was free to be with her. We thought Dad was completely devoted to our family. Everyone believed what Dad wanted them to believe. Carmen started crying, the kind of deep, devastating sobs that shook her entire body. I moved to the couch beside her and held her while she grieved for the father she thought she knew. How could he do this to us? She cried. How could he lie for so long? How could he let us struggle financially while he was supporting another family? I don't know, Carmen. I've been asking myself the same questions for days. And Mom? Does Mom know? I'm not sure. She might suspect something, but I don't think she knows the full truth. Carmen pulled away from me, her face streaked with tears but her expression determined. I want to talk to Sophie. I want to meet my sister. Are you sure? You don't have to do that right now. You can take time to process this first. No, Carmen said firmly. If I have a sister, I want to know her. This isn't Sophie's fault. She didn't choose this situation any more than we did. I was proud of Carmen's instinct to reach out to Sophie, rather than blame her for the situation. It showed the kind of person she was, the values Dad had actually managed to instill in us despite his own moral failures. Carmen, there's something else. Sophie is getting married in 3 months, and she's 3 months pregnant. She's planning to name the baby Carmen if it's a girl. Carmen's eyes widened. She's naming her baby after me? She's named after you two, Sophie Carmen Martinez. Dad gave her your name as her middle name. So we've been connected all this time without knowing it? It seems that way. Carmen, I gave Dad a deadline to tell everyone the truth. He has 6 days left. If he doesn't come clean by then, I'm going to tell Mom myself. Carmen nodded. Good. This can't continue. Too many people have been hurt by his lies. We spent the rest of the evening talking about Sophie, looking at her social media photos, marveling at the sister we'd never known existed. Carmen's initial devastation was gradually replaced by excitement about finally having the sister she'd always wanted. Elena, can we video chat with her? I want to see her, talk to her. I called Sophie, and within minutes my two sisters were talking and crying and laughing together. Watching them connect was one of the most beautiful things I'd ever experienced, even under these terrible circumstances. You're really getting married? Carmen asked Sophie during their conversation. In 3 months. And Carmen, I was hoping my father's other daughters would be there, but I thought you didn't want to meet me. We had no idea you existed, but Sophie, I would love to be at your wedding. We both would. Really? You'd want to come? Of course, you're our sister. After the call ended, Carmen and I sat together processing everything that had happened. I have to tell David, Carmen said. I can't get engaged while our family is falling apart. He deserves to know what he's marrying into. Are you going to postpone the engagement? I don't know. Maybe. This changes everything, Elena. How can I plan a wedding when I don't even know if Mom and Dad will still be married by the time it happens? 3 days before Dad's deadline expired, I received a call that changed everything. It was Isabella, Sophie's mother, and she was crying. Elena, Sophie gave me your number. I hope you don't mind me calling. Of course not. What's wrong? I confronted your father yesterday about the lies Sophie discovered. Elena, I had no idea he was still married. I thought he was divorced, that you and Carmen were just children who blamed him for their parents' marriage ending. Isabella, we had no idea you existed either. We all believe different versions of the truth. I feel like such a fool, she said through her tears. 26 years of my life with a man who was married to someone else. Sophie wants to know if the baby should even have his last name. I don't know what to tell her. What did Dad say when you confronted him? He begged me not to tell your mother. He said he was going to handle everything, that he just needed more time to figure out how to minimize the damage. My heart sank. Dad was still trying to control the narrative, still trying to manage the situation instead of just telling the truth. Isabella, I gave him a deadline to tell everyone the truth. That deadline is in 3 days. Elena, I can't wait 3 more days. I can't continue this charade. I'm going to drive to Sacramento tomorrow and tell your mother myself. The thought of Isabella showing up at Mom's hospital to deliver this devastating news was terrifying. Isabella, please don't do that. Let me handle telling Mom. She deserves to hear this from family, not from a stranger. But I'm not a stranger, Isabella said quietly. I've been part of your father's life longer than you've been alive. I deserve the right to face the woman whose husband I've been unknowingly sharing for 26 years. I couldn't argue with her logic, but I was terrified of the confrontation she was planning. Isabella, if you're determined to do this, at least let me be there. Let me call Mom and ask her to meet me somewhere private, and then you can come and we can all talk together." "Okay," she agreed. "But Elena, this happens tomorrow. I can't live with these lies for another day." That night I called Mom and asked her to meet me for lunch the next day. I told her I had something important to discuss about Dad. Something that couldn't wait. "Elena, what's going on? You've been acting strange for days, and now Carmen is being secretive too. Is your father having an affair?" Her question caught me completely off guard. "Mom, do you suspect Dad of having an affair?" "I've suspected for years," she said quietly. "The unexplained trips, the money that's never quite accounted for, the way he sometimes seems like his mind is somewhere else. I just never wanted to know for sure." "Mom, it's more complicated than an affair. Much more complicated. But I need to tell you in person." "Elena, you're scaring me." "I know. I'm scared too. But Mom, whatever you find out tomorrow, I need you to know that Carmen and I love you, and we're going to get through this together." The next day, I sat in a quiet restaurant waiting for Mom to arrive, knowing that in the next hour I was going to destroy her world the same way mine had been destroyed a week earlier. Mom arrived exactly on time, looking worried and tired. She'd taken time off work for this lunch, which she rarely did. "Okay, Elena, what's going on with your father?" I took a deep breath. "Mom, before I tell you, I need you to know that there's someone else here who needs to be part of this conversation." "Someone else? Who?" Isabella appeared at our table as if on cue, looking nervous but determined. She was a beautiful woman, clearly Sophie's mother, with kind eyes and graying hair. "Mrs. Martinez," Isabella said formally. "My name is Isabella Rodriguez. I think you and I need to talk about Roberto." Mom's face went white as she looked between Isabella and me. "Elena, what is this? Who is this woman?" "Mom," I said gently. "Isabella is the mother of your husband's daughter. Dad has another family in Phoenix. He's been living a double life for 26 years. What happened next was both heartbreaking and strangely beautiful. Instead of anger or accusations, Mom and Isabella began comparing stories, filling in the gaps of each other's understanding. Mom shared her memories of Dad's mysterious trips and unexplained expenses. Isabella shared her memories of Dad's reluctance to integrate their families, his insistence on keeping their relationship separate from his past. Together they pieced together the magnitude of Dad's deception, and together they grieved for the lives they thought they'd been living. "I'm so sorry," Isabella said through her tears. "I had no idea you existed. Roberto told me he was divorced, that his ex-wife had turned his children against him." "I'm sorry too," Mom replied. "I suspected something, but I never imagined it was another family. Another daughter." "Her name is Sophie," I said softly. "She's 25, she's getting married in 2 months, and she's pregnant. She's wonderful, Mom. You'd love her." Mom was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Finally, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "I want to meet her," she said. "I want to meet my husband's daughter." That afternoon, we all drove to Phoenix together. Mom, Isabella, and I made the journey in relative silence, each lost in our own thoughts about what this meeting would mean. Sophie was waiting for us at Isabella's house, visibly nervous about meeting the woman she'd been told was her father's vindictive ex-wife. Carmen had driven down separately with David, who was still processing the news about his fiancée's secret sister. When Mom and Sophie saw each other for the first time, something magical happened. Sophie immediately ran to Mom and hugged her, crying and apologizing for existing, for causing financial strain on our family, for being the reason Mom's marriage was built on lies. Mom held her and whispered, "Mija, none of this is your fault. You are an innocent child in all this, and I already love you because you're part of our family." Watching Mom embrace the daughter she'd never known existed, seeing Sophie find the maternal acceptance she'd always craved, witnessing Carmen and Sophie bond as the sisters they'd always been meant to be, I realized that Dad's lies had actually brought us something beautiful. We were a broken family, but we were finally a complete family. Dad arrived at Isabella's house that evening, expecting his usual weekend visit with Sophie. Instead, he found all of his lies exposed and all of the women in his life waiting for him in the living room. The confrontation was devastating but necessary. Dad broke down completely, admitting to the 26 years of deception, begging for forgiveness from everyone he'd hurt. He explained his impossible situation, his love for all of us, his terror of losing any of us. But explanations couldn't undo the damage. Mom filed for divorce the following week. Isabella ended their relationship permanently. Sophie struggled with whether to allow Dad to walk her down the aisle or to have Jake's father do it instead. The legal complications were extensive. Property division, custody questions about Sophie's unborn child, financial restitution for years of misdirected family resources. Dad's business suffered as the scandal became public in our small community. But through all the chaos and pain, something beautiful emerged. Mom and Isabella became friends, bonded by their shared experience of loving and being deceived by the same man. Sophie moved to Sacramento for the last month of her pregnancy, wanting to be near her new family as she prepared to become a mother herself. Carmen postponed her engagement party, but not her engagement, deciding that knowing the truth about love's complications made her more committed to building something honest with David, not less. I learned to separate my father's failures from my own capacity for trust and commitment. Miguel and I got engaged 6 months later, with Sophie and Carmen as my maids of honor, and Mom and Isabella both tearfully present for the ceremony. Sophie's daughter was born in December, named Carmen Elena Rodriguez Martinez, carrying the names of both her aunts and both her grandmothers' legacies. Dad was present for the birth, but as a complicated figure in our lives, rather than the patriarch he'd once been. We've all learned to live with the complexity of loving someone who betrayed us so fundamentally. Dad is still our father, still Sophie's father, still the man who raised us with love, even while living a lie. But he's no longer the center of our family universe. Instead, we've built something new. A family that includes Mom and Isabella, Sophie and Carmen and me, Miguel and David and Jake, and little Carmen Elena, who will grow up knowing all her aunts and both her grandmothers. It's messier than the family I thought I had, more complicated than any family structure I'd ever imagined. But it's honest, and it's built on truth, and it's ours. Sometimes when I watch Sophie and Carmen together, seeing how naturally they fit as sisters despite being raised apart, I think about all the years we lost to Dad's deception. All the holidays Sophie should have shared with us. All the milestones we should have celebrated together. All the memories we could have made as 3 sisters instead of 2. But then I remember that we found each other eventually, that truth has a way of surfacing no matter how deeply it's buried, and that love is strong enough to survive even the most devastating lies. Dad taught us about honesty by showing us the devastating cost of deception. He taught us about family by nearly destroying ours, then watching us rebuild it stronger than before. He taught us about love by demonstrating that even love built on lies can produce something real and beautiful if you're willing to face the truth and choose forgiveness. Our family will never be simple again, but it's finally complete. And sometimes, that's enough. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.